This week on Top of Mind, we go on location in Hamilton, Missouri for a two-part series on Missouri Star Quilt Company, a startup that is changing the landscape of Main Street in their hometown. I'm Tom Rue, and this is Top of Mind. Today we're at Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I'm here with one of the founders, Jenny Doan. Jenny, thank you so much for having us today.
You are welcome.
What an incredible place, what an incredible company and a story. For the viewers of Top of Mind, I was hoping you could start us at the beginning, and how it is that you and I are standing here today.
Oh, gosh. It's such an interesting story to me because it's not something I was expecting at all. The children actually were concerned about what I was going to do once they left home. I have to have something for my hands to do, so I keep out of trouble. So they bought me a quilt machine. They knew I loved quilting. I'd been quilting for about 20 years. That in itself is an interesting story because when we came to Missouri, I was a costume designer in California before.
Oh, really?
And nobody needed a costume designer, so somebody suggested I take a quilting class because if you love to sew and you're passionate about sewing, you can't stop. And so I actually took a class over in Chillicothe at the Votech, and my first little class there, and I was so addicted to it. It was single-handedly, hands down, the most creative thing I'd ever done.
Why do you say that? Now, I would think costume design has to be
pretty
darn creative.
Well, there's two things it's really interesting. First, if you make a costume, it has to hold together for 2 weeks and look good from 40 feet out.
Okay.
And that's it, and it's not used again. But when you make a quilt, it doesn't matter if you do a crummy job or a good job. It doesn't matter if your kids like it. It doesn't matter if they throw it away and give it to Goodwill. That quilt becomes an heirloom, and somebody's going to walk along and go, I can't believe I found this. There's such longevity with a quilt. But the creative part that was interesting to me is that when I made this block, this one log cabin block, that was my first quilt class, and I turned it a quarter of a turn, a whole new pattern would appear.
Really?
And I would have to sew it together, and I'd make another one, and a whole new pattern would appear. I mean, it was just so creative. And so when I got home, everybody was in the class. Class took about 6 weeks. They were finishing their quilt. I had made 12 of them because I just couldn't get over how amazing it was.
Just a little eager there, were we?
Oh my gosh, a bit of an overachiever, But so the kids they knew I loved quilting. They knew I loved sewing, and for years they wouldn't wear matching clothing anymore. So they're all those sailor suits they just wouldn't do. Anyway, so they actually got a quilt machine for me, and when the machine came, it was actually too big for our house. They're huge. They're like 14 feet long. So we ended up buying a building. The building actually...
You bought a building to fit the equipment.
Machine, yes. The building, it actually cost less than the machine did. So now we have a quilt machine in a building, so we have a business. So we put machine quilting up on the front window, and my husband and I stood there one day and we thought, so this is our retirement. This is what we're going to do, And then Alan came home. He was watching what was happening online with quilting, which, I didn't know anything was happening online with quilting.
When was this around? Like 2000?
2008, right after we opened it. We were open just a couple of months, and he happened to notice that a lot of people were Googling quilting. I still probably at the time didn't even know what Googling meant, but now, but at the time that was something that was pretty new to me. And he came in and noticed that a lot of people were going online to learn quilting, where quilting had always been something we learned in a quilting bee or a church or from our grandma or something like that. They would teach us how to quilt. And all of a sudden people were going online and Googling that. And there wasn't a lot out there. So he came home one day and said, Mom, would you like to do tutorials? And I said, sure, honey, what's a tutorial? I didn't have a clue. So we started.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? But, sure, And so we started doing these tutorials, and I was teaching people how to make things.
She remembered right in the middle of making that door that she had a very pointy hat. So she thought she better put a door.
But in every business, it has its own language.
Right.
And so I'd be doing something, and Alan would say, Mama, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. I don't know what those words mean. You're using words like four-patch, and, he says, I don't even know what that is. And so I had to back up and start at the very beginning and explain, what we were doing from the step out. And so he started putting up these tutorials online, and people fell in love with them because they were simple. And if they could see it, they could do it. So we started doing that, and the one thing Alan noticed was we started getting letters from people who wanted my fabric. I had brought my personal fabric in to do these classes, and they wanted it. And I said, no, this is my fabric. I'm just teaching you how to quilt, So we started noticing that, Alan started noticing that people were wanting the fabric, and he thought, well, let's buy some fabric and use that fabric to make the quilt and see how that goes. And, people just fell in love with that, and they fell in love with the ease of the tutorials.
Your son, Alan, and other of your kids said, let's keep mom busy and hopefully give them a little bit of an income on the side. They buy you a machine that you have to buy a building that can fit it.
I know.
Now you're starting to do these tutorials. You're starting, basically getting recognition online. What happened next?
Well, it just started to grow, really quickly. And we were just a family. So we're working like crazy. We felt like we were chasing our tails. None of us got paid for 2 years, and we were just working like crazy. And Alan was over the computer part of it. We all had the things that we were over, but we were all still trying to do everything, and it was just crazy. The first hire we made a hire, and it was this little gal. We hired her to come clean our bathrooms, because that was the first thing we could let go, But we had friends helping us. I had a girlfriend who would come in and help us, and none of us were really getting paid. We were just trying to stay afloat because it was growing so fast.
Wow. So fast forward a couple more years. What started as family, literally.
I finally got being paid minimum wage.
Did you? Congratulations!
Yes, I was so delighted.
And you're not the only one making a little bit of income. I mean, today here in Hamilton, how many people get to say they're employed by, Missouri Star Quilt?
Well, I thought it was 100, but I heard at lunch actually yesterday that it was 115, I think now. But in August, I think we only had 40 employees.
My.
And so it's grown hugely, leaping and bounding. And
as we toured today, we got to see, all of the buildings that are involved and all of the employees that are involved. As I understand it today, you are literally shipping thousands of orders every day. And you have a following that's not just local or even national, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, it's actually all over the world. That's one of the things that surprised me. It's it goes everywhere. If the internet goes everywhere. And so it's I'll get a letter from Iran or from Norway or something like that. We just want you to know how far people are watching you, and I'm just wow, this is really cool. I have a big following in Australia, apparently. And it's amazing to me. That is really amazing.
I know the biggest bulk of the business is online.
Mm-hmm. It really
is. That's where it happens. But you do have multiple, storefronts and retail storefronts here. You're converting a hotel space because, you have people coming in and almost like as a weekend escapade.
They do. They come to have fun.
And they just several days and nights and just sit around and quilt.
It's like girls' weekend out, but you're accomplishing something. That feeling of creating and accomplishing is huge.
What do you see the future of quilting as it relates to the next generation?
As it relates to the next generation, I see a lot more younger quilters.
Okay.
Because sewing was in my family, but my grandmother was the youngest, so she never learned to sew. So my mother didn't learn to sew, but it was something that I wanted to do always. So I joined 4-H when I was 10, and I learned how to sew. So then what happened was, I sewed my whole life. It was for me, it was my underwater basket weaving. It was what I always went to. If I was stressed, I sewed. If I was happy, I sewed. Whatever it was. It was always something that I was busy doing. And so for the next generation, I see they're the ones who are going online. They're the ones who are looking and Googling it, and we see new quilters all the time. And for me, for the new quilters coming in, they are so delighted with the ways that I do things because they can do it and feel confident, and they feel good about what they've been able to do. And once you feel confident about something, you try more things.
Well, it's just great that you have an opportunity through the company to really pass something down, as a legacy. And again, I think that's just fantastic that you have that chance. 10 years out, 20 years out, however long, what do you hope, the legacy of the company will be?
It would be security for our family and security for the people in the town. We're bringing a town back to life. And
you certainly are.
Where it was dying, and the buildings were going away, and we were down to one store and a gas station. Now people are coming in here, and they come in every day, and so it's gonna, for future generations, there'll be jobs for kids here. There's gonna need to be more housing here. We already have people coming in going, is there anything in Hamilton for rent? And it's just, there's so many things that are gonna happen. We have new restaurants, and so they have employees, and I mean, it's going to be stability and growth is what I see. And, I hope security for a lot of people.
Well, I have no doubt whatsoever that will happen. And I just hope that at that time, the generation that's going to be, calling the shots will remember the legacy, and that it started with your kids buying you a quilting machine as a way to get you a little bit of side income. And instead, it's turned into an economic empowerment that I think can be a model all around the country. And I want to thank you for welcoming us into your home today. It was a real treat.